Recording on my end. There you go. We're live. Welcome back to the show.
Well, thanks for having us back.
And I apologize. We were talking off here. I was supposed to have you on a couple months ago, and then life does what it does best and go to absolute shit in a handbasket. But it was so April is child abuse awareness month.
It is. It's a national holiday that we try and do as much as we can for awareness and everything to let people know we're still here.
And so, I mean, are you guys, it's a little cold up here in Wisconsin, but I mean, are you still out on the bikes and doing events like that, or is that more down in the warmer states?
We ride whenever the weather's permittable. If we got to suffer a little bit because it's cold or rainy, it's nothing because our heroes are going through more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So our little sacrifice is nothing compared to what the kids go through. So
I know last time you guys were on with was that two years ago now?
Something like that. Yeah.
You were talking about, I know Lionheart was talking about, and a couple guys went with him across Wisconsin in a snowstorm, or just had a snowstorm roll through it. Yeah. What the heck? No, thank you. But yeah,
the roads are clear.
As long as the roads are somewhat safe, we ride. So
sure. And speaking, coming off COVID this year or this last year, I mean, I know a lot of court systems were doing everything virtually. I mean, did that affect you guys? Were you doing, what you do? With...
Phoenix is our court liaison. She can elaborate a little more on the dealing with the courts and COVID.
Well, a lot of our stuff we saw get pushed out because they couldn't bring people in. And through victims' rights, you have the right to be there in person, and you have the right to ask to face your offender. And because of that, they had to move everything through virtual, and it made it hard for us to be able to do so. But a lot of the counties have been really receptive to giving us those links or allowing at least one or two of us to be in the courtroom with our heroes. We just actually had a discussion the other day because we're getting so known. If it's a jury trial, we can't wear our vests in the courtroom. And we think that is a good thing. But it's also bad for our heroes because this is part of that brings them into our family. Mm-hmm. So
are the heroes, are they allowed to wear the vest? I mean, being a kid.
It's just our signification
right.
of our wearing the vest that the defense attorneys don't care for it. And at the end of the day, we are at the mercy of the judge and to allow fair trials, which is every human's right. It sucks for us.
And going out, meeting the heroes and their families, I mean, has that been a challenge during all this, or did you move to the virtual platforms like so many others?
You want to answer?
It's been a little bit of a challenge, like anything, but we have to keep pushing forward, and that's what we've been doing. We've been actually starting to get more and more emails and whatnot from people coming out of the woodwork now that seem like they're starting to get excited about wanting to join what we do, and other families are in need of our help. So I think we're on the other side of it now, and it's picking back up.
And for listeners that want to volunteer and help out, I know we went into that quite in depth back on the last time you were here, and I'm trying to look at the episode because you'd think I'd have my homework done after 2 months, but no. But it was about 2 years ago, so that I don't know the number off the top of my head, so forgive me.
It's okay.
But with that, I mean, like I said, moving to the more virtual and stuff like that, but I was hearing stats, especially when quarantine was in full swing, that repeat drug use and alcohol abuse and such like that, even domestic violence was skyrocketing. Did you guys see an increase of families going through, what the heroes are going through and coming forward because of that, or did that go down?
Statistically, we stayed the same. So our numbers didn't increase from previous year, but we did see a lot more creative ways for people to reach out to us for the family's help, for the court's help. Multiple panels that I sit on talked about, with the stimulus payment and people having nothing but time. There was a ton of drug-related charges to go through. So, while the teachers at school can't see the physical abuse, they still know about the abuse going on in the home.
And how much of a challenge has that been on you with all the, extra work coming in, or has it been fairly easy to navigate through with the extra downtime?
That can go both ways. There's some times where it gets inundating just because you want to be able to help every single person that calls. They have to fit a criteria, and it's hard to say no. So you spend that extra time giving them the resources that they need.
And
It's been kind of a double-edged sword too, as far as we may not have been getting as many cases because of the communication, and the COVID thing was tough, but at the same time, some of our numbers have been down too, as far as our membership and stuff, because on organizations like this, typically, you're not looking at people that on average are volunteering for 10, 20 years. Most of the time you get 2 to 5 years or something if you're lucky. 5 years is kind of on the high end. So we kind of rely on being able to get out in the public and have other people see us, through awarenesses and stuff like that too, and want to pursue joining us. But since we've been, having to kind of sit on our hands a little bit because of COVID, it's been tough for us to replenish the numbers of people that we lost over the last year and a half. So while the numbers stayed the same, with the chapter shrinking a little bit, that put a lot more weight on everybody else's shoulders, so that's why I kind of smirked when you said that about downtime, because it really hasn't been, because those of us that are still, still hanging around, it's been less downtime. But like I said earlier, the phone's starting to ring, the emails are starting to come in and stuff. So I see our numbers going back up. So that'll relieve everybody. So
Unfortunately, I don't think COVID slowed down child abuse. If anything, it's probably excelled it. It's just everything's so backlogged, like everything else in the world, that I think it's going to hit like a shitstorm here pretty soon. Once the court systems can get back to their, however they do it, they're going halfway right now. So I got a gut feeling by the time this COVID's done, it's going to get really busy.
And just
if anything, there's probably more abuse cases going on that haven't came through the system yet, just because people have been stuck at home and doing stupid crap, and it's coming.
Yeah, and I've noticed quite a bit, in the increase on the mental health side, whether it's a advertisement on a podcast, social media for services out there, even an increase in sex trafficking and child abuse organizations out there that are working to help. And I had a listener asked over Instagram, and just to clarify, you don't work with the local law enforcement agencies or state level to do the investigation side. You do?
Well, okay, so we work with them in the aspect of they can give us referrals to cases. They can, with the legal guardian's permission, share information, but we don't do any of the investigative.
Right. And
yeah, we kind of come in where if there's an abuse case and say the family's scared or being threatened, the police can't stay there 24/7 and protect the kid and the family. That's something we can offer because we're volunteers, and if the child needs sleep and they're worried someone's outside, we'll go there and stay outside and let the child get their sleep and make sure they want to go to school. We escort them. We're the law enforcement, they don't have the resources to do that.
And I suppose, now that we're almost 10 minutes deep, I probably should have started with this, but do you just want to give a brief, broad stroke overview of what is BACA, or Bikers Against Child Abuse?
Sure. Our mission statement says it the best.
I could just read after all these
Yeah,
years.
absolutely.
You could have it memorized, but so the mission statement. Bikers Against Child Abuse, BACA, exists with the intent to create a safer environment for abused children. We exist as a body of bikers to empower children to not feel afraid of the world in which they live. We stand ready to lend support to our wounded friends by involving them with an established, united organization. We work in conjunction with local and state officials who are already in place to protect children. We desire to send a clear message to all involved with the abused child that this child is part of our organization and that we are prepared to lend our physical and emotional support to them by affiliation and our physical presence. We stand at the ready to shield these children from further abuse. We do not condone the use of violence or physical force in any manner. However, if circumstances arise such that we are the only obstacle preventing a child from further abuse, we stand ready to be that obstacle.
Yeah.
So that's our
Yeah.
That's our elevator speech overview there for you.
And I think I talked about it last time you guys were on, but yeah, the first time I saw or I heard of the organization is just an article I think is out of the Southwest. I want to say Texas, New Mexico, but is this little picture with a little kid with the biker vest on, and probably 20 or 30 burly bikers with their bikes out all surrounded around. And they're just having a good time playing. It's like, what the heck is going on? Right into it. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And then kind of got shoved to the back of my mind until Bull reached out, or we got talking through our mutual jobs, and hey, I had this cool podcast. You should come talk about that, blah, blah, blah. And so it was fun talking to you then. But, and I know, like I mentioned before, we went into depth about, how to be, or what you do and what you kind of look for in a new member. But you mentioned, you're trying to replenish those numbers. I mean, if somebody's looking to come help out and volunteer, what are you looking for?
I'll take it.
Basically, you got to have access to a motorcycle to be a supporter or member of BACA. You got to come to 2 meetings, our monthly meetings. And then if we get a good feeling, we'll take in, you got to get an NCIC background fingerprint. And then once that clears, you can start training and taking, the next step in BACA. Minimum of a year of learning, doing webinars, and you have a sponsor that shows you the ropes. We're not going to just let anybody work with our kids without, proper training and support from the chapter.
To add to that, what we look for is we want someone who can put the kids first, because that's honestly, obviously why we're all here is to help the kids. So, we're not a riding organization. We're not, anything like that. We're here to help kids. So if you show up and your first priority is not to be there for the kids, then you're probably stopping by the wrong place. So that's that, dedication and loyalty and integrity are pretty important too.
And I think it's hard for people to understand what it means to be a member of BACA. I got 10 years of it, and I can bet you there's 20, 30 times where I've been wanting to quit and just, it takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I always think of, all the good things that came out of it, and there's no way I can leave. I'll hit rock bottom, be ready to turn in my patch, but either we'll have something come up, or I'll think of a past court case, or just a happy kid, that is an adult and doing good. It keeps you going.
Yeah, I still
You
remember.
really gotta take it and run with it when you get into BACA. Like I joined BACA, I ran into some members and they invited me to a soup cook-off, chili feed. And I looked at the girlfriend at the time and I'm like, this is just a fake group because Wild Hogs was the big movie then.
Yeah.
Sons of Anarchy. I bought tickets just to support them. Well, that morning she wanted to go to it, and I'm like, nah, screw that. But she talked me into going, and we went there, and I said, hey, come to a couple meetings, and we did, and here it is 10 years later, and empowering the shit out of these kids that need us.
And I remember, the story, I can't remember who told it now, but her name was Starfish last time you guys were on.
Yep.
And for the record, somebody was cutting onions in the studio that night. So I don't know what anybody else says, but
We won't say who.
Right. When you're doing stuff like that, I mean, it's got to take a bit of a mental toll on yourself. And you said, like you said, you're there for the kids. I mean, how do you guys just kind of box it up for the time being, pack it away, and then how do you take care of yourselves on, you know, the mental health side of
You
it?
got to count on the members, your brothers and sisters to, you know, we debrief every time we do something. Before we do it, we have a briefing. Afterwards, we debrief. You know, and you got to count on your fellow BACA members and supporters to support you, because it is a tough thing we do. And, you know, without the supporting cast, you know, it takes a whole village to do this. So
It is difficult too, but like anything, you know, you might struggle to make it through one day or the next, you know, trying to help some of the kids we're helping out or the heroes, but it takes that one time when, you know, whether it be in court or whatever the particular situation is, to hear, you know, that hero say to you, like, thanks, you know, I couldn't have done it without you or something. And you know what, that right there, it, for me anyway, completely alleviates all the stress and all the, you know, everything that you've had to endure to be able to help that child. You know, it immediately kind of, for me again, you know, kind of flushes things out and puts me back at zero, you know, until we can help the next one and keep the process going, you know.
If you see another member that looks like maybe their stress levels are just a little too high, or maybe they got, you know, too many cases in a row, whatever the case may be, but they're at that point where maybe they need to take a knee, but they're not willing to admit it to themselves. I mean, have you ever had that conversation with each other or within the chapter? Like, hey,
Yeah.
sit this one out, go take a nap, you know, whatever, do what you need to do, but then you'll be here for the next one.
So I can actually attest to this. We've had membership changeover, as we had talked about. And in that, positions change within the chapter. You know, you have to learn to cover other positions. We have our executive board, which is our president, vice president, security, secretary, and treasurer. When those positions vacate, we have to put new people in there. So those opened up. We have court liaison, agency liaison, child liaison, initial training sponsor. I mean, there's so many that go on. And in that, I had to adjust some of the roles that I was in to take over for vacancies. And one of them was the child liaison. So typically in the past, our child liaison hasn't needed to be a primary to the children, just because there's been enough membership to support that. But we're now in a situation where we're having to have the child liaison be a primary as well. I think it was like a month and a half ago. I was struggling pretty hard mentally, and I still am. I'm not going to hide from that. I've never hidden the issues that I've had, but I hit my breaking point because I didn't sleep the night before. I was completely drained, super stressed and worried about being there for this kid. And I just broke down. I was in the vehicle with Tank and Itchy heading out heading out to one of our meet spots, and I'm sobbing in the back seat. And both Tank and Itchy are like, hey, you take your time. If you need to go home, go home. And then my mom calls saying she's on the way to the ER with heart issues. So you learn to adjust your perspective really quickly, because if I can't care for myself, I can't care for a kid. So we have to learn to have that discussion with each other. And then we have to learn how to get through what we're going through to help the kids not go through this later in future, because they haven't learned coping mechanisms, because I don't have them. But I don't show that outwardly, you know, it's an internal torment.
And, you know, you'd mentioned, you know, you're doing a year of training. I mean, do you have like auxiliary training, if you will? So, you know, Phoenix, you need to take a knee, and can you go, hey, Bull, I need you to do this one thing for me today. Can you do that? I mean, is there that, you know, structure in place?
we help each other out, you know, and if it gets to the point where you can't help them at that moment, they have the option of taking a leave of absence. and keep their status in the chapter. And they just file the paperwork and they can take a break, and whether it's family life or they're just having had a, just it wears on you. So sometimes you need a break.
So the other thing, sidetracking a little bit,
No worries.
the only person you don't know that wasn't at the last one is Tang. So
I was gonna say, yeah, it's my memory's perfect. It's my recall. It's not so good. So my apologies.
nope, that's totally okay.
You'd remember a good looking guy like this.
Right. It's the blurry screen, I swear.
It is. No,
We got him from an Amish farm.
I didn't know they had motorcycles out there.
he has a special horsepowered one.
Right.
No, so how we were talking earlier about COVID and restrictions and all that kind of stuff. Myself and Bull and Tank vicariously just dealt with something similar with this one of our heroes. His court kept getting postponed, and finally his date came up in court. He ended up having a 2-day jury trial, and in this time, I might let Bull explain this because he was a primary, and then we'll kind of fill in some gaps.
Okay. So
And
basically,
real quick-
this case we had, we call our kids heroes because what they do is, we consider them heroes. He, being his primary, I didn't know what he had been through, because we don't, as primaries, you don't need to know, you don't care to know unless the child wants to share it with you. But unfortunately, when you go to court and the child testifies, you hear the details. And I had no idea the abuse this kid had been through. So I was glad that we were able to empower him to speak his mind to the court and stare down the perp and be able to, get his get his feelings out. And, and it was just, this child was so scared being at court because the perp was out on bail and walking around the courthouse. It was a 2-day trial. So we literally had to, when the child was in the victim witness room waiting to go in, we had to stand with our backs outside so he could see our patches, because he was worried the guy was going to come into the victim witness room and get him. And it's, and he did phenomenal.
So the part that is like the biggest kicker, he's being questioned by the state, which is the prosecutor, and it's going really well, and then defense gets the opportunity to question him as well. And the defense attorney said, "So your name is XYZ. Can I call you X?" And he's like, "No, it's Mr. Z." So to see this kid put the court people in their place. I mean, I have goosebumps just thinking of this, and seeing that kid from the day we did the level 1, 2.5, almost 3 years ago, and still be able to live the life of empowerment, facing his perp down. And so on the second day of trial, it was way late at night. We weren't thinking court was going to wrap up that night. So a couple of the members stayed in town just in case the verdict came through. And the verdict had come through, and
Like 7:00 at night.
yeah. And Mr. Z reached out to his primaries and said, "Hey, can you come over to my house? I've got news to tell you." And then you can.
Yeah, so we went to the hero's house. And like I said, being this kid's primary, he didn't show a lot of emotion. He was real quiet and mellow. I never seen so much tears and smiles from a kid, and he had hugged every one of us. It was cool seeing him because you could just see the relief, and it was, I don't know, it's just hard to explain. It was excitement for him, but it was also like a lot of relief.
Mhm.
I mean, he had to literally go around and hug everybody and thank them like 3 or 4 times. You know, it was pretty amazing to see the whole process play out, you know, and it just lets you know what we do works. It's incredible every time I see it.
Well, and to speak to the inspirement of this kid, or empowerment, if you will, he's going to learn how to be a law enforcement officer. He'd done some ride-alongs with the law enforcement officer. He's very much coming out on the upper end of things, and that's what we hope to do with breaking the chains. So I think we talked about it before, but the symbolization of the patch and which each piece of the patch means, and breaking the chains is one of them. And that kid, his chains were broken the day he got to stand up on that I can't think of the word anymore. Stand, thank you, not stage. See? COVID brain.
I thought it can't be done.
Well, it's been a long week for everyone.
He got to stand up there on that stand and say, you know, hey, this is my life. You did this to me. I want my life back.
And us just talking about it don't even touch the hardly any of how incredible it is. We could talk to her blue in the face about it, but to actually witness it, it is so incredible. It's, you know, and this he's going to go on and be something someday, you know,
Mhm.
and, you know, and he hid the abuse for what, 5 years
5 years.
before he even told anybody, you know, and some, you know, they get triggers and, you know, something brought it out and he wanted this guy to face justice before he hurt other people. And, you know, so he's a true hero.
That's why, you know, you asked us earlier about, you know, what we look for in people and you know, to join our organization. And it's funny because I'm always the first one to say that, you know, we could use more help. We could use more help. You know, the more people that we have, the more, you know, more kids we should be able to help, you know, if we have a bigger chapter in theory. And even though we need people terribly, I spend more energy trying to talk people out of coming back to the second because, you know, of the stories that they're telling and stuff. And like Bull said, it doesn't do it justice. You know, it's like the, you know, the picture you took while you're camping and you're trying to show everybody and like, look how beautiful this is. Well, the picture never, you know, never does justice for what you're seeing with your eyes, you know, and it's the same way. That's why I'm so protective over our heroes. You know, I figure if I spend all this energy trying to talk people out of coming back, if they keep coming back and they're stubborn and they keep wanting to join, then you know, you're like, okay, you're one step closer to being the kind of person that I feel like I can trust around these kids that we help, you know. So
And by Tank doing that and saying that, that's when someone joins BACA, you want them to stick around for a long time just because, well, they put all the work into it, but certain kids might connect with a certain member.
Mhm.
And I've had to go around, have members quit or whatever, and explain to these children that took a particular liking to a certain member that, you know, they're no longer part of the group. You know, and that's why we do our training and, you know, we make sure you're, you know, a good fit. And that's why we do like the de-stressing and, you know, if it's too much and you feel like you can't handle it, take a break. You know,
It's a lot.
Yeah, and like, well, I mentioned before, you know, the story of Starfish. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and it wouldn't hurt to have a box of tissues on hand for that one.
yeah.
And
No,
sorry.
go ahead, Gordon.
No, go ahead.
I just, you know, I've been in BACA long enough, you know, and statistics, you know, there's 1 in 5 kids experience sexual abuse before they're 18. You know, so I always think about, look at a classroom, 25, 30 kids. There's 5 to 6 kids in that classroom that have had not just other abuse, but sexual abuse.
1 in 3 females.
You know, and honestly, society, it's the dirty little secret. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to hear about it. You know, it's just wrong. We've tried calling like news stations to do, hey, April's Child Abuse Prevention Month. Let's do a story. No, they'd rather do a story on like solar cars and, because people don't want to deal with it. And
Right.
it's actually a hidden epidemic. A lot of drug and alcohol abusers as adults were abused as kids. And that's their way of self-medicating. You'll be out in public with your vest on. I bet you I've had over 100 people come up to me as adults and be like, where were you when I was a kid? And then they start telling their story, because BACA wasn't around back then when they were kids. So it's a bigger epidemic than people think. It's
When did BACA officially come together?
1995,
So here
and
we
then
are.
the state of Wisconsin in 2007.
something like that. Yeah.
And
But
so yep, go ahead.
we're in like 17 countries and all 50 states. So
Don't mind the cat.
It's fine.
That's not part of BACA.
Yeah. But to go back, so remind me again, you said level 1 with a kid. If just want to walk us through what a
we could
level
have
1
Phoenix
is.
do that, kind
Yeah.
of her department.
Yeah, so basically what happens, the legal guardian, oh, I can talk, I'm sorry.
We're much better bikers than spokespeople.
Yeah, true. The legal guardian contacts our helpline. And I can always give you that. Actually, it's on the back of the trifold. It's 888, I think. Yep, 888-806-5437. In the state of Wisconsin, there are 6 chapters.
6, yeah.
6 chapters. We're option 7. We're based out of Hudson, New Richmond area. So option 7 puts that legal guardian in contact with Great Rivers. Great Rivers serves all up and down the riverbank, and I would say close to 100.5 miles around the area, so Minnesota and Wisconsin. After that legal guardian contacts me, I ask a series of questions. Has it been reported to anyone? It could be reported to the authorities, and whether it's an investigation or not, that doesn't matter. It just needs to be reported to the proper channels. There's a couple reasons for that. There's a lot of protection of the mission that happens from that, because we want you to be honest about this, and there are some dishonest people out there. So that helps weed that out. We ask a series of other questions. From that, I bring that information to my board of directors. Usually when that parent calls or the legal guardian calls, I have a very good understanding of the abuse the child has suffered. A lot of it is just the first reach point for that parent to word vomit something out. And it's not a bad word vomit. It's them saying, I desperately need help and I don't know who to talk to. Please help me as best as you can. So like I said, I bring the location, how many children may be involved, and whether I think it's a good case for BACA to move forward with. And then my board of directors say, yep, go ahead and move on with the intake. So myself and sometimes 2 or 3 other members come out and we just go meet face to face, 1 with the legal guardian and 2 with the kids. Before I meet, I always send out the YouTube video that we have for the kids to watch with the legal guardian. It's very descriptive and it gives kind of a good idea to that kid what they could expect. Because our image is everything, and that's intimidating, even sometimes to the kids,
Right.
But they always get this whole thought in their head. They're BACA people are scarier than the perp. So that works to our advantage as well. But at the end of the day, it's all the kids' choice. If they don't want us involved, we don't get involved. It's not what the parents want. It could be what the parents think is good for them, But if that child says no, we're done. And that's one step in giving that child their voice back. And it's huge. From that, we determine.
Yeah, real quick. Sorry to interrupt you. If a child, maybe they say yes right away, but then they change their mind, or vice versa. Say they say no, and then they decide okay, maybe I do want BACA around. Can the parent or legal guardian call back and be like, hey, they changed their mind. Would you mind talking to them?
Absolutely. That's always a revolving door. Sometimes there are situations where maybe it's looking like a custody situation that I have to say no to, but then the parent contacts me later after custody has been reaffirmed to that legal guardian, where it's not a 50-50 situation, where it fits better for us. So we can reopen that. If we get 4 weeks into visits and the kids are saying, this isn't for me. I mean, it could even be at the level 1 and we're done. So what the level 1 is where we welcome them into our BACA family. So we show up with as many people as we can, on as many bikes as we can. Try not to be too over intimidating. We heard a story of like 100 and some odd bikes going to a level 1, which if you put 2 people on that bike, I mean, that's over 200 people for one kid. And that kid you kind of muddy the mission that way. So we try and keep a balance. We give them their own vest at that. They get their own bear. And, Burden, I wish we were in your place, because I would have you hug this bear. Because these bears are filled with forever hugs, and they're safe hugs for the kids to get. So we'll go back months later and see this bear completely tattered because they're hugging on it so much. And what we want the kids to know is not only are we here, but the people that support us love to hug on this bear too. I did a presentation for the Lions Club, and we passed this around, and the amount of hugs and the people holding on to it, it was astronomical. And to see Titan, this is not for you. To see the people, their eyes light up over something as simple as a teddy bear, and knowing that they are adding some sort of piece of healing for this child is huge. From there, the 2 primaries go back and visit every 2 weeks. And then every 4 weeks from there, 6 weeks. And then we just kind of fade off in the background, depending on if court's out in the future, or if we're seeing that empowerment from that child. We just back away and naturally fade into the background.
Take cues from the children. Some of them take more visits. Some of them after 2, you can almost go, this kid's getting to where they got to be already. So yeah, like she's saying, it's a lot of cues from the kids every 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, depending on their schedules and the family schedules and whatnot. So at the level 1 though too, the one thing that I know she's a little bit nervous, kind of skipped over, that's important for the kids is when we give them their vests, one of the big things that we do is we let them pick their own road name. Like we all, obviously, Phoenix, Bull, Tank, we all have our own road names. That's another way we give them their power. You know what I mean? Like you get to pick the coolest name that you want, whether it's your favorite kind of motorcycle or your favorite cartoon character. You want to name yourself after your favorite candy. We don't care. That's your choice. And we tell mom and dad and auntie and grandma, perfectly honest, we don't give a damn what you want the kid to be named. Okay. I stop trying to influence them. This kid wants to be named Jelly Bean, they're going to be Jelly Bean. It's that simple, And then we dump a big pile of patches in the middle of the floor and tell them, all right, you start picking patches. These are the ones that are going to signify you and what you stand for. And, it's another way we give them their power back. They get to decorate it any way they want. We offer them a motorcycle ride, obviously that's one thing, we need permission from the parents that it's okay. Right. But, as long as the parents say it's okay, or guardians say it's okay, then, we take them for a ride around the block, or, a ride, the 15-minute ride or whatever, something like that, But again, that's their choice. If they say nope, then no, we don't do it. You want to put the cut on, you know, or the vest on at the level 1? Nope, don't do it. That's your choice then. You know, I mean, everything is about giving them their choice, whatever they want to do, you know, and that's the biggest way, you know. People always ask us, well, what do you mean you empower them? How do you empower them? It's so simple that it's you know, the keep it simple stupid method. You know what I mean? We literally, we show up when we say we're going to show up. We do what we say we're going to do, and we let the kid be a kid and speak for themselves and make their own decisions, you know. And what, I don't know, I'm not a spokesman, but the efficacy or whatever, if that's the word I'm looking for, of that it's ridiculous, you know. Just simple stuff, the road name, the bikes, the, you know, the patches they pick out. It's amazing how big a difference even those couple of quick things, you know, you can see change at the end of the level 1 a lot of times just from those things.
Another thing about the child picking a road name, and we use road names, is that way they don't know our real name, so they don't search us on social media. You know, we don't need them to see what our personal stuff is. If there's kids you're primaries for, you don't know their real name. I've had kids go through the whole BACA thing. I still don't know their original name. I know them by their road name.
And by primary, you are the primary contact
Visitor
to
to
that
the
hero, his visitor. And I
Yeah.
imagine then
Child can call me 24/7, 365. They're scared, threatened,
Happy.
Each child gets 2 primaries. We always do everything in at least 2s, you know. That's for our safety and for the, you know, and for the heroes too, you know. There's always somebody accompanying, you know, so everything's on the up and up, you know what I mean. That's the big thing, you know.
and go back, and I know what you mean by the intimidation bit. You know, Tank, we're not in person, obviously, over Zoom, but I get an impression you're not a little fella. And I'm 6'3", and it's not often I feel small in a room. But I mean, a few of you were to show up outside and be like, what's going on, guys? Want some coffee?
Goodness, seriously? I have a parrot.
Got all the studios.
You know, another thing, you know, we mentioned intimidation. We don't try to intimidate the kid or the perps. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to cause mistrials or whatnot. But Phoenix was talking about kids. For some reason, kids always levitate to bikers because they know bikers they're honest. They're going to do what they're loyal, generous. My mentor when I was in the Minnesota chapter, when I first started, he's the biggest, scariest dude he's probably your height, Gordon. He's padded from here down. The only thing that ain't padded is his face. And he's got this look like I'm going to rip your head off and shit down your throat. You know, he's just, and this guy was my sponsor. You know, I followed him. And every time we do a level 1 or taking a new kid, these little kids were like a magnet to him. And it's the only time you'd see this guy smile. I mean, and you know, the reason the kids always levitated to him is because he's the biggest, scariest dude there, and they're thinking, no one's gonna mess with me with this guy, you know. And it was just amazing to see it. I mean, if you saw this guy walking down the street, you'd go to the other side or turn away, or you know, and that really amazed me, and that's what kept me going.
And you wouldn't think women would be intimidating, but there's a softness that the women bring to the organization that I think helps balance things for these kids too. Because not every perp is male, not every perp is female, not every perp is old, not every perp is young. So, you know, we try as best as we can to keep these kids realizing that not every person out there is bad, but the good ones can make you really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, women are very important in the BACA roles. And they get patched in just like the guys they're equal. You know,
it's very uncommon in the motorcycle community to have this much power and respect as a woman. and we're touching on different things here, but as a woman, normally I wouldn't have this opportunity to talk to you.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be allowed the same civil liberties through this without this organization giving me the chance.
Now, she's my wife, so I have to respect her. The other people do it.
Yeah.
Women can definitely be intimidating. I can attest to that. Having a mom that was a teacher for 41 years, I'm 33 years old, and there's still times where I'll ask myself, yeah, no, she'd probably knock me out for that one. Well, let's not do that.
Yeah.
But going back, you mentioned the persona around bikers. I mean, a lot of that I would, yeah, as an outsider, I don't have a bike. It seems to come from the Hollywood, like you mentioned, Sons of Anarchies, or Born to Be Wild by Steppenwolf, or Turn the Page, of course. I mean, does that seem to help or hurt your cause?
So it's interesting. I was just primaries last year to a kid that actually had asked if it means that we're going to come and take that kid to our clubhouse. So she had seen clearly the Hollywood version. So no, we explained we're just here for you. We're going to come visit you at your home or your safe place. She was terrified, unbelievably petrified of the motorcycle. Her mom had one, but she was terrified to even sit on it. Yeah. So we ended up having to go back, and it's not a having to go back. We ended
Right.
up going back to give a ride, and to see the smile on her face because she wanted to go on the ride. She wanted to be on that motorcycle. She felt safe enough to overcome a fear. And that's my payday. To see that kid ask for something that they don't have or they were so afraid of having, that's my payday. That's, like Bull was saying earlier, how I get through my darkest days. And it isn't about me. It isn't about Bull. It isn't about Tank. It's about these kids. But we all have our own badges or shields, stripes, whatever you want to call them, to bear as well.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned
When the empowerment comes from, like Hank said, us showing up with the bikes, when we take the hero for a ride with the group, it makes them feel like they're part of our organization. And, and I've seen kids, they're not around motorcycles. I've seen them, we'll say, hey, come out, look at the bikes, and, oh, I don't want to ride, and they'll look, and then all of a sudden you'll start one up, and let them touch the throttle. And, next thing you know, they want to go for a ride, and it's their choice, 100%. But that's where BACA has the niche to help these kids, is the brotherhood and the family and the bike organization. Because even your Hells Angels and Outlaws, they are so family oriented, and they take care of each other, and that's kind of what BACA does. And we're there for these kids that way.
And you mentioned the social media side of things. They don't know your real name, but social media seems to be the currency of today, with most of my generation and those preceding mine. How do you guys manage that? I mean, on one hand, it's how you get it's free advertising for an organization like BACA or whatever the case may be. But how do you balance it out with, at the same time, keeping it private, that the work-life balance, if you will?
So a lot of our posts actually come from international, anything BACA related, such as events or upcoming information comes from our international page. To keep that balance, some of us keep our pages completely private. Unless you know me personally, you don't know how to find me. A lot of it is not taking pictures with our vests on. If we have our vests on, blurring out the logos. So sometimes it's bad. There are times to not say that our vests aren't unblurred out on pictures isn't always the case, but we try and control as much of the information that the public has access to, for the simple fact of, one, it's trademarked, so it is an official logo. It can't be duplicated. We try and keep as much of this information protected so that we can help protect the heroes, because their information is their information. No one else needs to know it. So we try and keep it as locked down as we can.
I got a real short, simple, stupid answer for that. I just
Yeah.
stay the hell off of Facebook. Then I don't have to worry about it.
Don't host a podcast then. So
I do listen to podcasts.
right, yeah.
I don't do Facebook.
Well, I've joked with friends and family that if I didn't have this podcast, I would have deleted my own personal accounts years ago because of the dumpster fire that they become quickly.
Yeah.
But
Again, like she was, the way we keep everything separate again, there's a lot of these people that, like Bull, right? There's times I gotta actually, I've known the guy for 5 years. We've been together, doing stuff for 5 years, pretty tight knit, eat dinner together, hang out, on weekends, that kind of stuff. And there's times I actually gotta stop and go, if somebody who's not in BACA refers to him as his real name,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, oh yeah, that's right. That's their name. So since we use our road name so much, that's the biggest part of it, as long as the heroes don't know what our real names are. And that's why, a lot of things, like say a newspaper or, maybe a different podcast or the news or whatever, a lot of them won't even interview us if we don't say, my name's Tank, AK, blah, 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 and give my real name. They won't even have anything to do with it. It's like, but we do that on purpose, so that it's for our safety and for the heroes we help, so that there's no way to connect the dots on any of this stuff.
and so I'm just curious, for the road names, do you guys get to pick your own? Like you said, the hero gets to pick theirs, or is it one of those, within group friends or the military or whatever the case may be, you get the name that you're stuck with, and good luck trying to shed that one.
It's a little of both,
If you do something stupid, you're gonna get a name.
Like
So-
Bumper Gun.
Yep. We got a member that her road name is Jam, but they were going to visit one of our heroes at a karate class. And they pulled in on their bikes and they're doing a U-turn in the parking lot. And she happened to be going by this car, a Chevy Trax, and her foot caught the bumper and ripped the bumper off the car.
brand new car.
Brand new car, so she got the name Bumper. Well, here the damn car was the BACA Hero's mother's car. So now she's got an extra name patch. And then we had another guy when I was in a different chapter. He showed up in this big ugly poncho. And he's like, well, I want to pick my road name out. And we're like, no, you're Poncho. He's still Poncho today, It's like, who in the hell would wear that?
Right.
My road name's Tank, but one time a guy had to stop and pee. So immediately I became Tiny Tank because that's, apparently I got a small bladder, So yeah, there's all kinds of ways, most times people at least have a pretty good say in what their name is, but they change over time sometimes.
I remember when we were down at Blind Ninja Studios A, that delightful little basement hot box. Was it dillweed or itchweed, something like that?
Tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed. There we go. Okay. Get confused. We have a friend of mine. We call him Dillweed because he was a dillweed in high school. But most importantly, if there's somebody out there listening and they want to get in touch with you, or maybe they know some that could possibly use your help, or BACA as a general, wherever they might be, what's the best way to get in touch?
So there's BACAworld.org, which is the website. You can actually look by country, by state, I believe you can put your zip code in now and it'll find the closest chapter to you. Otherwise, you can call the helpline It's 24 hours statewide, 888-806-5437 or 806-KIDS. Option 7 for Great Rivers. You can reach out through the Facebook page, through Instagram. I'm not quite sure that they have a Twitter, but if you reach out through the messengers on either platform, they will get you in contact. Emails get forwarded from international down to the chapters based on, the president fields it for the state and then sends it to the chapters. But yeah, any social media platform, like I said, with the exception of Twitter, it's out there. So
Yeah. And our meetings are open to the public, so anybody can come to a meeting. Just go on the website and look up Great Rivers and it'll tell you where our meeting is and what time and, but
there's
is-
Thursday, 6:30 p.m.
And is there a if somebody wants to join or volunteer, is there an application they can fill out online, or should they contact the chapter for that?
They need to show up. They need to show up and like I said, do the two meetings, and then there's the whole personal vibe feeling, between the rest of the chapter and stuff. Just it is, you're human too, man. You get that vibe, and sometimes you just get a bad vibe, and and maybe it doesn't work out, maybe it does, but I can't honestly say that I can recall anybody that showed up that really, showed up a second or third time and really was interested in joining that we went. No, most people that show up are there for the right reasons. So
I've had
One.
and he was 7 or 8 months in before we
Wow.
just asked him to leave. And he was an older guy, but he just had little flags kept popping up, and he had a clean background check and this and that. But he was just, that's why we do the minimum of a year to get a patch, before you work with our kids. And the board talked and we're like, this guy just ain't a good fit because we're not going to take any chances with their kids. And and he was asked to leave the chapter. And
with that being said too, as far as just because you join our chapter, you do the 2 meetings, and you meet with me and you do the background check, and you clear, like Bull was just saying, we still have 90 days after that we set as our personal Great Rivers chapter sets as a kind of a minimum, that as a chapter we want to get to know you more than just this quick little interview, if you will, to get in before we start bringing you around the kids. So in reality, you're looking 5, 6, months or more from the first time that you come to a meeting before you have an opportunity to meet kids. So we just do that again so that we figure there's plenty of time for us to get to know you. And there's a lot of people that can put on a good face for for a month or 2 months or whatever, but normally around 5, 6 months, most people show their true colors by then, and they've also had the chance to start doing some of the training and learn, how we deal with the kids that, I'm 6'3", 6'3", 240. If I come up to a kid that's already scared, that's a little 7-year-old kid, I might scare him. So our training shows us that we get down on one knee, we get down to their level. There's little things like that you got to learn before we bring you in front of the kids too. So.
And I'm also just not going to let an opportunity for a child to get attached to someone who may not be around.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part, is we tell these kids, we're your family, welcome to the BACA family. I'm not going to let them have one more person let them down, because I've had to have that conversation, where another primary is left, and it's devastating, unbelievably devastating to this child, because that person they were so attached to isn't there anymore. And they're already struggling so much to say, hey, by the way, I'm still here, but this other person isn't anymore. And have them question why. What did I do this time? And it's, again, trying not to cry. But for that kid, we are everything, but we're also nothing. without their own strength, we're ineffective. So to know that I could be even part of that disappointment or give that child more disappointment, I just won't tolerate it. And, I butt heads with my membership explaining this to them, but it's because I'm so passionate about being there for that child that it comes across as bitchy or rude. Or, I was told that I was stuck up, and I'm like, I am the most friendly person you can know. What the hell? And it's the persona or the image that you put out there, because when you truly feel something for something, you're going to be protective of it.
Well, that's another thing with our training. It's little stuff that we learned. Like, we never make a promise to the kid, because I may have the world's best intention, but I can't fulfill that promise because I didn't realize I was going to get sick. So I can't be there that day when I, promised them that I was going to be there. So we never make promises. We don't say things, as we're leaving the visits. We don't say, okay, I'll see you in a week, or I'll see you in 2 weeks. It's things like, all right, well, BACA will be back, that way, in case something happens, God forbid I die, or I can't make it, or I leave the organization, or whatever the case is, we're not letting them down. To the best of our ability, we're not letting them down.
Mhm.
I mean, like Phoenix said, it's a volunteer organization, and to say that everyone's going to be here forever, that's a pipe dream. We all know that, but there are people that have been here a long time. Like I said, Bull's been around for 10 years. I've been here for 5, and Phoenix is just behind me a little bit, but we're kind of the long-standing members sometimes at this point, so unfortunately, not everyone has the ability to stick around as long as we've been able to. We've been fortunate that our kids are grown and everything, so we got the time. But but when we can get people that can come and volunteer for 2 or 3 years, it's still awesome to be able to get to know them, and we'll take all the help we can get. And if you got 2 or 3 years to give, then that's better than 0 years, right? That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, and we do stuff outside of BACA as a chapter. Like, we'll take a Sunday and like barbecue, or we'll meet up, go out to eat. We'll go to my house, have a gun shoot and barbecue. Just that's kind of the de-stressing, and and that's where we get to know people outside of BACA to make sure they're a good fit, and it becomes your family. Like, we all know more about each other's personal stuff than we should, because you become friends.
Right.
It's a family. So
I call him my brother, and I actually had to call him to help me with my daughter's car one time. He was at work, and I'm like, "Hey, Bull, are you near?" He was like, "Yep, absolutely." That's my brother, and I would expect him to call me for the same things. And to say that it doesn't hurt when my brother or sister leaves the organization would be a lie. We're all in this for the same thing. We bond over something similar, and we become family through time.
And just for somebody listening, they're thinking, hey, this is something I want to do. On a busy week, we'll say summer, because that's when everything gets done up here. How much time should they plan on committing to this in order to be, after that 1 year mark, when they're a member, they have their patch?
You got to maintain 80% of all meetings of any events we do. You got to maintain 80% of the mandatory events. And then we got other stuff we do that ain't mandatory, but we still like you to participate in that. You do got to go to court at least once a year. And if we don't have a court case and you're coming up on that year, you got to go to one of the other chapters' courts.
The biggest time commitment that I would say in a week would be if we're doing the fairs, you're looking at about a 40-hour week. We haven't done the county fairs in many years, but be prepared for a 40-hour week every once in a while. Our camp out, that's a 24, 48-hour period. One day's mandatory, one's not, but it's part of that bonding thing with BACA.
On average, you're probably looking a couple hours a week.
High end 40.
But that's, it's the reason it's really hard to give you an answer is because it all depends, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm currently primary to a hero that the bike ride alone to get to the visit is about 2 hours each direction, you know.
Right.
So I mean, if you count that, I got 5-6 hours every other week or whatever, just in that, you know. But do you really count ride on the bike as, you know, working? Nah.
Right.
so it's a hard number to come up with.
Right.
But it's easier to tell you it's going to be, you know, 20 or 30 hours on busy weeks or whatever than to tell you 2. And then you all of a sudden we have a busy week and you go, what the hell? You know, like
Right.
you told me it's 2 or 3, you know. So.
Right.
And
But
if
just so
someone
somebody
wants to
listening
join
doesn't waste
BACA,
your time. Sorry.
if someone wants to join BACA and they don't have, you know, if they're not sure if they can do the 80%, they have an option after the first year of training. They don't have to be a patch member. They can be a full supporter. And they have all the same rights as we do, except for they can't vote on chapter decisions and they can't be a primary, but they can still they can still help empower the kids. They can go to court. They can, you know, and there's a lot of people that do that. And then we also get people throughout the BACA nation that we've helped their family, and the parents will go out and get their motorcycle license to join BACA. You know, just because they've seen how it helped their kids and they want to give back.
Mhm.
But you don't necessarily have to be a patch member, you know, and do the 80%. And I think if you want to be a full supporter, it's just 60%.
60%.
And a question from the chat. They're asking if the 3-wheel is the Victory brand counts as a motorcycle.
The
With
3-wheeled motorcycle, like the
The Spider,
Yes, Spider.
I know they're licensed as a
Yeah.
motorcycle in Wisconsin. And we had this question brought up and international said no, because that'll take away from the actual motorcycle empowerment.
Are you thinking like the slingshot?
Yeah, the slingshot.
That could be.
Yeah,
Looking at the verbiage, I don't think English is their primary language, so I'll give them a little credit.
We would defer them to the international page
Right.
Yeah, the
to talk to
slingshot is,
them.
yeah.
Slingshot for sure, no.
Spiders, you can be in BACA,
The spiders, yeah.
but a slingshot is more like a car. Even though I know Wisconsin licenses them as motorcycles, but
Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming on the chat. Appreciate you taking the time to be on the show once again. We'll wrap this up, and thanks for everyone for joining us in the chat and on the live stream. And listeners, if you have any questions, I'll include the BACA website in the link in the show notes. So go click on that if you have any more questions and such. And otherwise, we will catch you next time.
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.